Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I'm Aaron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is James Early. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited for you to be on today. Can you just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Okay. Well, I live in Connecticut. I've sort of reconstituted myself where a lot of my friends are retiring at this point in their lives. I'm kind
Hmm.
of gearing up for a whole new take on life. I was, gosh, back in 2008, I started doing a weekly Bible study at a federal prison. And that has really opened up my heart and my eyes and my mind to the fact that a lot of people are hurting in the world, and I want to do whatever I can to help them. And so, as a result of that, and kind of finding my own voice in that process, I started a podcast back in 2019 called The Bible Speaks to You. And the tagline for that is think, pray, and love like Jesus. It's not a well, I'll put it this way. I am really done with all the theological debates about who's right and who's wrong on their doctrine. As far as the Christian faith goes, I'm more interested in actually getting back to the nuts and bolts of what Jesus said, how to love people, how to treat people. What does it mean to forgive? What does it mean to love your neighbor as yourself? Oh, and there's a good one. Loving yourself. That's maybe
Yep.
sometimes the hardest one. So that's kind of who I am. I do some speaking engagements. I do some online teaching. Um, I've got a coaching program. So everything I'm doing right now is focused on really helping people discover who they are as a child of God without all the labels that society has put on them or that we've put on ourselves. We do it all the time, but try to strip all those labels off and see who you are as a child of God, as a child of the love that is in the world. And so
Yeah.
uh, that's kind of who I am. Just other brief things about me. I grew up in Texas.
Okay.
I've been married for 35 years. So been living in Connecticut for about 32 or 3 years. Got three grown children. I love to garden organically, eat good
Okay.
food. My wife is a really good cook.
Yeah.
And like to go hiking and those kind of things. So
That's
that's a
awesome.
little.
Yeah, thanks for telling me about yourself. I have like 12 questions that popped in my head since you started talking, but I'm gonna do my one I always do before I forget.
Yeah,
Let's just
okay.
start off with what is your definition of inclusion?
Love that question, Aaron. Nobody has really ever asked me that question before, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this because to me it's really important. Years ago, like when I was in high school, and it was like 50 years ago, when I got serious about my faith and trying to be a better person and all that stuff, I was very judgmental of people. If they were different from me, if they
Hmm.
had a different theology or went to a different church, I felt like I'm right, you're wrong. I got to prove I'm right. And that was a very immature, prideful, kind of
Hmm.
youthful approach to life. Over many years, and I think especially as I mentioned my prison ministry, especially in the prison in reaching out to people uh, that are very different from me and have had very different experiences, I have learned to be much, much more inclusive. So to me, being inclusive means kind of as I mentioned earlier, stripping all the layers off of all the labels we put on ourselves or that we others put on us and we identify with, and getting back to the core essence of who we are as an individual, a person. Each
Hmm.
of us has value and merit. So this is kind of a long-winded answer. To me, inclusiveness means recognizing everyone as a child of God, whether they think of themselves that way or not, but that way I can love them for who they are and not be judgmental of what their backstory is or their circumstances that they didn't have anything to do with. I just love them. To me, inclusive means loving everyone as my brother and sister.
Yeah, that's a great definition. What got you started? What with the prison ministry? What prompted you to want to start that?
Well, back in 2006, a friend who was doing the prison ministry at the time asked if I would be willing to help her. And I thought, oh, absolutely not. I didn't feel qualified. Uh, I have lived a somewhat sheltered life. I've never gotten involved in drugs or alcohol or done any wild and crazy things. I was kind of a goody little two shoes guy
Hmm.
and always trying to do what was right. Not that I
Right.
always did, but I didn't feel like I had um, any life experience that would be of value to someone that had committed a crime. Why would they listen to me? I didn't know what they had experienced. And so I said, no. Well, 2 years later, I was in a different place. And the person that had taken over from that first person asked me, and I said, oh, I'd love to. Switch,
Hmm.
just words came out of my mouth. So I did it because someone was asking me to help them in the process. And I think they knew they were going to be phasing out, and because they moved later, so then I kind of took it over by myself, and
Sure.
it was really, I think God, from my perspective, I feel like, hey, I do have something I can offer. I was realizing
Mhm.
my own value, whereas before I didn't think I had anything to offer. At this point, I did, and I think from God's perspective, is like that. It's been the best thing for me to teach me to love everyone, as I mentioned earlier, and prepare me to do other things. So it's been an amazing experience.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've grown up in I grew up Baptist, grew up in church all my life, and I've known several people who do go into I'm not prisons around here, but just like the jail. It's like a jail ministry, so something similar probably. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of been intriguing. I mean, I have not. When I went through my divorce, over 10 years ago now, I joined something called Celebrate Recovery, like a Christian-based um, alcoholics that kind of group. I
Okay,
didn't go for
cool.
that reason, but it's kind of similar where you like there's certain steps you work through, and then you go up to the room, all the guys sitting around just talking and sharing, no judgment. And that was kind of my first time just sitting with other people that growing up Baptist wouldn't have been at church with me, and just realizing like how they are like like you're saying, your brother and sister. We've had different lives obviously, but just we're way more alike than we are different. And I mean, just
Oh,
that whole
so
piece and just being
so
comfortable around
true.
each other. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, too, just I mean, I'm working through some of my stuff, from growing up in the church, and just you see all the people that call themselves quote unquote Christians and then not being hypocritical, and then you come across, these guys that they were sharing their hearts with us. That, I mean, I would, there's being open up front, like I did this, I'm not hiding it. This is me. I shouldn't have done it, but I'm admitting it, and that piece is also very healing and was a good perspective for me also.
Oh, amen to that. I think when you're in a group of people who are being honest with themselves,
Yeah.
that's a powerful healing
Yes.
attitude. For even if you're not the one opening up, I mean, it's like a breath of fresh air,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it blesses everybody in the room.
Yeah. And when you can just share, and then no, there's in that setting, there's no like comments, or just sharing, getting it out of you, and there's no like judgment or anything. That's a very powerful piece of it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So part of what like my message too is, we talked about love thy neighbor. I have a tattooed on my arm. I just feel like that would help the world if we all loved our neighbor. Can you maybe go into a little bit? Um, Jesus obviously
Yeah, well,
said that, like your perspective on loving your neighbor.
I have really my practice of loving my neighbor just keeps expanding
Mhm.
all the time. I keep growing in my ability to do that, because and I think it really is largely because of, as I said, being in the prison and getting to really care about these people. You hear somebody, oh, well, they committed a crime. Oh, that's terrible and everything. You get judgmental. But then when you talk to them and find out how they were brought up, and their
Mhm.
parents told them they were stupid and they're ugly and they're never going to amount to anything, and they're uh they're a wicked, terrible person, and there's no love there. I mean, or they're being abused physically, emotionally, and sexually, or various combinations of all those things. No wonder they've had their lives messed up and they've committed a crime. They're trying to just survive, or they don't have a moral compass to look at. And so learning people's backstories has helped me be much more has helped me be much more compassionate. And once you start being compassionate, you you realize, oh, they were doing the best they knew how to under the circumstances. Well, I can support them where they are now and try to bring in a little love and some respect and some non-judgmental support. And so loving my neighbors myself is realizing, I that could have happened to me. I could have been in those kind of situations, and I probably would have turned out the same way. Um, so it's I guess the first thing I'd say is, even if you don't know what someone's backstory is, like you're driving down the road and the highway and somebody cuts right in front of you to get off at
Mhm.
the exit. You know, you the common response is you react and you think the guy's a jerk. Well, maybe he just got a call that his wife, was taken to the emergency room. I mean, you don't know. Maybe he is a
Yep.
jerk.
Yeah.
uh, but he's still a child of God. And there's
Yep.
something in his backstory that has caused him to do that. It might be something immediate, or it might be something that goes back from when he was a kid.
Right.
And so for me, being aware of that helps me be more compassionate, say, okay, I'm going to love you as my brother or sister, as a child of God. And whatever the backstory is, or whatever you're struggling with, this is my analogy. Those things aren't really part of your identity. I think of it as, I've used this analogy in my prison ministry a lot and on my podcast as well. Um, I like to ask people, if they ever, well, I'll ask you, Aaron, did you ever play in the mud when you were a kid?
Yep.
Did
I love digging around in the mud and making paths for the water to drain out and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's just fascinating, right?
Yep.
It's so tactile, and so you can be so creative with it. Well, one time I asked a group of ladies in one of my Bible studies at the prison this question. She said, "Oh yeah," and she said, "One time one of my kids was so covered in mud I didn't even recognize him."
Mhm.
Well, my question for you and anybody listening right now, if you ever played in the mud or maybe your kids did, are you still covered with that mud? Do you still have that mud on you? Did you save some of that mud and put it in a little jar and put it up on the shelf and celebrate that mud and honor
Mhm.
that mud and bow down and worship to that mud and say, "Oh, this is the mud that I played in when I was 7 years old"? Probably not.
Mhm.
But the things that happen to us in life, we tend to identify with and think that's who I am, that's what's happened to me, and I I'll never be able to change that. Well, that part's true, but it's not part of your identity. It may have happened to you, like you played in the mud, but the mud was never part of you. And so, um, this whole idea of loving your neighbors yourself is, I'm trying to see through the mud that a person has jumped in and been part of, or that sometimes the world throws you in the mud puddle. and stomps you down, and you're covered in mud. The terrible things that happen to us in the world.
Yeah.
And sometimes we jump in the mud ourselves when we think we're enjoying it at the time, or we can't stop. But whatever those things are, the abuse that you've experienced, or the discrimination because you're different from someone
Mhm.
else, that's not your identity. What other people think or say, or the things that have happened to you, that's not your deepest core identity as a child of God. And so, to me, loving my neighbors myself as is seeing beyond, beneath the mud, and just
Mhm.
loving that person as a person.
Yeah. That's, I love that. This might be controversial in some circles, but when Jesus said love your neighbor, who did he mean by neighbor?
Well, he explained that because he told the story of the Good Samaritan, who
Yep.
the Jews were not very fond of. That's putting it very lightly. They were very judgmental of the Samaritans. They thought they were inferior. They were sort of remnants of some Jewish um, culture and peoples, but they weren't. They didn't worship the way the Jews did. They didn't believe all the things the Jews did, and so the Jews were very self righteous. And that's a generalization, but um, they were looked down on, and it went both ways, most of the time. So Jesus tells the parable of a guy getting beat up, and all the Jewish people that walked by this guy didn't help him, but a
Hmm.
Samaritan, who was considered to be like the trashiest person around, he's the one that showed compassion and love and took care of this guy that was beat up. And so the point of the story was that uh, we should treat everyone as our neighbor. We should be neighborly to everyone, regardless of what their circumstances are. Um, and we should be willing for someone else who we don't like to treat us with kindness. That
Right.
part's not usually talked about in that parable, but we need to be able to receive love from someone that we might be judgmental of. And that's kind of hard to do. If you're judgmental of someone and someone does something nice for you or tries to help you, you get suspicious, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that whole parable of Jesus saying, "Love your who is my neighbor," is like he's basically saying everyone. You should treat everyone as a worthy human being, as a valuable child of God, regardless of what their circumstances are, or their background, their heritage, um, their race, or religion, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with you. It's just sometimes it seems others don't have the same view of. I mean, it's your neighbor, but not all my neighbors. It's just certain ones I need to be. I need to love.
well,
It's like nope, I
Jesus,
don't think that's true.
you're right.
Yeah. Um, what does it mean to have the mind of Christ? I like this is a good question.
Oh, I love that question. Um, there's several places in Paul's writings in the New Testament where he talks about one place he says, "We have the mind of Christ." Another place he says, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus." Um, what if we could think in the same way Jesus did? What if we could have the same love in our hearts for people that Jesus did? What if we had the same ability to pray like he did without the fear or the judgment? I mean, think of who Jesus spent his time hanging out with.
Hmm.
He he went any place. He would talk to anyone who was receptive to what he had to say, whether they were the rich, fancy people, or the lowest of society, the outcasts, the people that society had said, you're no good. We'll never talk to you. Uh, Also, people like the who had leprosy, they were considered not just contagious, but they were like religiously, spiritually unclean, and you couldn't touch them. One, for you didn't want to catch the disease, but it was also a spiritual thing too going on there. And Jesus went and talked to all those people because he said, I came to help the people that need help. I didn't come to help the people that don't need help. That's kind of a paraphrase. And so, um, boy, I got way off track. What was your your question? I got so.
Now the question was, what
What?
is mind of Christ?
Yeah, well, yeah. What does it mean to have the mind of Christ? I think it means to. I like to say the mindset of Christ. You know, we talk about mindset a lot. You can have in today's world, you probably know someone, and if you're listening, I'm sure you know someone who has a limited, fearful, lack mindset. There's a worry mindset, or you know somebody who has a positive mindset, a hopeful mindset, a cheerful mindset, joyful, all those things. And sometimes we've got a little combination of different things like that. But Jesus's mindset was interesting. I've studied this a lot because it's really important to me. He said, I can't do anything by myself. I can only do what I see my Father in heaven, referring to God. I can only do what I see God doing. God is doing it. I'm bearing witness to what he's doing. I'm kind of paraphrasing a few things here.
Sure.
I think the other part of his mindset that's really powerful is that he started his whole ministry with an incredibly um what's the right radical new idea. He said, hey, I've got really good news. The kingdom of heaven is at hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's not way off in the future. It's not just way off in the future when you die. And we still don't believe him.
Mm-hmm.
I hear almost
Yep.
all Christians talk about, well, when you die, you'll go to heaven
Yep.
if you're truly a believer. Well,
Yep.
Jesus said, no, 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 no. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Later on, he says the kingdom of God is within you. That's a very different perspective. That's a very different mindset. What if we could be so conscious of the presence of God's kingdom, of his love, his his um, his care for us, his his um, governing presence, where he's taking care of us. What if we could be so conscious of that that we felt that every day? Sometimes even just for 5 minutes, it's great to sort of feel that. So that to me is what it means to have the mind of Christ, to look at things from the perspective that the kingdom of heaven is at hand,
Mm-hmm.
and that uh, there's always a solution. God will find a solution somewhere or other. It may not be what we want or think it should be, but there's always um, something available to us when we're thinking about things from the perspective of what's in the kingdom of heaven right now.
Yeah, well, like I told you before we started recording, I listened to a couple of your episodes this morning, and that piece about the kingdom of heaven is at hand. I mean, I grew up Baptist, so all of our focus was on getting saved and going to heaven after you die. So it's an interesting. That's quite a different viewpoint and where the focus is at for sure. Which,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, it is, and it takes a shift. We
right,
don't realize how much we've been conditioned by
right,
church, the society, whatever
right,
culture we've grown up in is uh God's love. All God's love is here right now. If you've got your eyes closed to it, or you don't want to deal with that, you may not see it. That doesn't mean it's
yeah,
not here.
right. Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to maybe have you talk about a little bit is I listened to the episode about it's possible for um people to be healed in this day and age like Jesus healed. And the piece that I'm probably not going to get this 100% correct, so you can maybe correct me or go into detail. The part about when Jesus saw somebody like the lame man, he could see what they look like from heaven's view, and he was just bringing that view of them to earth and that part of it instead of actually like correcting like the deformity or that piece. Maybe I just completely messed that up, but can you hopefully know what I'm talking about?
Well, this is my perspective on.
Yeah.
I mean, I've thought for many years about how did Jesus heal people, and some people say, "Oh, well, he was the Son of God," But he says, "Whoever believes in me will do the same works that I do,
Yep.
and greater works than I do, because I'm going to the Father." It's like we're going to do greater things than Jesus did. I'm like, what
Right.
is how what? And I think the way I see that is it's more of a collective thing. Like, hey, what about we work on world peace?
Right.
He got the ball rolling in effect. Well, back to this idea of the kingdom of heaven is hand, and that was the real thrust of his ministry. He whenever he sent his disciples out, whether it was the original 12 or later on he sends out 70 or 72, depending on which Bible translation you read. He said, "Tell everybody about the kingdom.
Mhm.
And while you're at it, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the leopard, cast out demons or evil spirits or whatever." It's like, oh, by the way, while you're at it, no big deal. But they felt this empowerment of feeling the presence of the kingdom of heaven with them. It's very empowering. And so, to kind of elaborate on the example you were talking about, um, let's say there's a story in Matthew chapter 9 where some people bring their friend who is lame to Jesus, and there's so many people around the house where Jesus is. They climb up on, and they
Yep.
can't get in.
Yep.
They climb up on the roof and they take off the tiles of the roof. Have you ever been over in that part of the country? They have these terracotta tiles and they're just kind of sitting on top of the rafters. They take these tiles down and they lower this guy down through the hole in the ceiling
Mhm.
so that he can get to Jesus. They are so sure that he can heal them. Well,
Mhm.
I don't think it was some magic formula or some magic, some like in Harry Potter where they said a certain phrase, and
Sure.
that's not how Jesus healed. I think it was the love he had for everyone. It says he was moved with compassion on people. That's
Mhm.
that's what part of what enabled him to heal. But I think he had this vision of what is true in the kingdom of heaven, and that it is here. We just can't see it. It's kind of like, you know, um, I'm a little old school here, so I'll use the analogy of a radio. Right now, well, we could use modern day things, satellite uh, waves that
Yep.
make your cell phone work or all the internet. You can't see any of that.
Yep.
It's there, but you have to have a device to tune into it. Well, I think that's a little bit of an analogy or metaphor for the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is here. We just can't see it. We can't see it with the five senses, the five material senses. So, but Jesus was aware that God's kingdom was indeed absolutely present. And so there are other parts in the Bible that talks about in heaven, there's no pain or
Yep.
sorrow or sickness or death. There are no tears. There's no evil. There's no sin. There's no, deceit or lying. There's none of that stuff that that earth is so full of. None
Right.
of that is in the kingdom of heaven. Well, I think Jesus saw that so clearly. He could see, oh, here, I mean, his material eye. You could accuse me of putting words in Jesus's mouth. I don't know what he was thinking. This is how
Right.
I have processed from everything I've studied over many years and thought about and
Yep.
prayed about. So this is just the way I see things right now.
Mhm.
I think Jesus saw so clearly that in heaven, that man could not be lame. He saw that so clearly. It was like, Well, maybe it was like somebody that maybe there's some device that, if there's fog, maybe there's some certain I'm not a physicist, but there's some device that can see through the fog, and so you can see what's really there.
Mm,
Uh, you know, he could see what was really there in the kingdom of heaven, that this guy was not lame
mm,
spiritually. He was so clear in his thought that it was like, if you go in a dark room and there are a bunch of people in there and you turn on the light switch, the light does not just shine on you, it shines on everybody in the room.
mhm,
And I think Jesus kind of turned on that spiritual light switch because he saw this man in heaven was whole and complete. Um, that everybody else caught a glimpse of that. Now, from Earth's perspective, from everybody else there, they thought this guy used to be lame and now he's healed. But from the perspective of what's true in heaven, nothing changed because he was always whole and
right.
complete. And so uh, I don't know how that resonates with some of your listeners, because I know we're all struggling with one or more
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
in life, and to me the core is, well, I'll say, okay, well, what is true about me in the kingdom of heaven? And I encourage everyone listening to ask yourself, well, what is true about me right now in the kingdom of heaven? You are loved, you are included. Everyone in the kingdom of heaven is rejoicing over how wonderful you are, and you're doing the same thing for them. It's like a dance of joy that, oh, we're all together, we all love each other, we all accept each other, and we're all just reflecting God's love back at each other. And to me, that's what's true in heaven. And again, we've been taught that's way off in the future somewhere
Yep.
after you die. But
Right.
what if Jesus is right? What if it is right here?
Right.
And so that's kind of, I think that's brought an element of healing.
Hmm.
And at the time, and I've had that in my own life. I've seen that with other people I work with. Um, and
Yeah.
so I would just invite your listeners to think of themselves from the perspective, what is true about me in heaven? How does God see me? Uh, what does he see who I really am down deep?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that in more detail. Do you want to maybe share a little bit about your coaching and what that looks like and how people can connect with you for that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have a coaching program called the Jesus Mindset Coaching Program, and um, we do a deep dive into exploring the mindset of Jesus, going kind of elaborating on a few of the things I've talked about with Aaron, and it really requires someone that is ready and willing to take an honest look at themselves and say, and not be defensive about, well, that's the way I am, or that's the way I was brought up. Yeah, we've all got that stuff, that kind of baggage. And if you're ready to get rid of some of that baggage and take a new approach to things, that's what this uh, program is for. And I've actually, Aaron, put together a special page just for your listeners on my
Oh, awesome.
website,
Okay.
and I will send you that link,
Sure.
but I'll mention it now. It's thebiblespeakstoyou.com/dad. That's one of the
Awesome.
words out of your podcast.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
if you'll go to that page, there's several resources there for you. One is, if you'd like to subscribe to my podcast on the website, I mean, you can listen on Apple or Spotify, any of those places. But if you sign up on my website, I'll send you an email each week, telling when there's a new episode out. But I also have a little prayer guide called Praying, um, How to Pray Like Jesus, or something like that. Praying with the Mindset of Jesus. And it's just some Bible passages that sort of bring out those elements of, how did Jesus think about things? How did he see? How did he look at the world? The second resource is a playlist of some of my previous episodes that talk about your spiritual identity, who you really are, as way down deep in your heart. How did God originally make you in His image and likeness? And that's a really powerful uh, group of episodes that you might find helpful. And then the third resource is if you really think this Jesus mindset coaching might be good for you, I'm going to offer your listeners a free 1 hour coaching call. It's not a discovery call. We actually start getting into this process to see if that's a good fit and
Sure.
something you'd like to go forward with. So
Yeah.
all those resources are on that page, and I'd love to know, hear from you, if wherever you're listening from, to know, hey, what was helpful. And if you'd like to check out my podcast or be in touch with me, I would love to be in touch.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I typed that down, but yeah, if you want to email that to me so I can make sure I put in there correctly, that'd be awesome.
I certainly will.
What is one tip you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? So just something anybody can start doing today to be more inclusive.
Oh gosh, there's so many things I can think of. This is going to be sort of counterintuitive.
Okay.
I would say forgive yourself. We can be pretty judgmental of ourselves sometimes and in a negative way. And I would say stop that, because when you are compassionate with yourself, it's easier to be compassionate to somebody else. Give yourself a break, uh, and be aware, as I said earlier, be aware that everybody's got a backstory, and try to see through that, um, and just love the person that's underneath all that mud.
Yeah, that's great. I don't think anybody's ever said this, anything related to themselves to be more inclusive. I like that. That's good. You said something different. That's awesome. You ready for the last question?
Oh, okay, sure.
Do you like spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
Not currently. I grew up eating Spam. We'd make Spam toast, and I thought it was great, but I haven't eaten Spam in 50 years.
Okay, that's fine. I'll put it as no, but yeah, the reason I asked that question is I live near Austin, Minnesota, where they make spam and where the spam museum's located. So I just popped that question on everybody just to see what the reaction is, and so yeah, it's
Cool.
interesting. It's usually pretty strong yes or pretty strong no. Either people like it or they don't. Usually,
That is
yeah,
true.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hey, Aaron, it's been great. I really have enjoyed you. You've asked some really good questions that
Thank you.
I've never been asked before. I always love that, and I look forward to connecting with your listeners if I can be of any help to them.
Thank you. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.